Today's voiceover talent is more than just a pretty voice.
Pretty voice.
Today's voiceover talent has to be a boss.
A boss.
Join us each week for business owner strategies and success with your hosts Ann Ganguzza and Gabrielle Nistico, along with some of the strongest voices in our industry.
Rock your business.
Rock your business.
Rock your business.
Like a boss.
Like a boss.
Rock your business like a boss.
Rock your business like a boss. A VO boss.
A VO boss.
A VO boss.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguzza, along with my boss bestie, Gabrielle Nistico. Hey Gabby, how are ya?
Hi, Ann. I'm good. How about you?
Gabby, I got questions.
We always have questions. My Lord.
I got questions. There has been just a ton of activity out there on the socials, and I thought it would be good for us to discuss.
Who does what?
Yeah, I thought it would be good to discuss today what really is the difference between casting directors, agents, managers, and production studios. What are their roles, and who does what, and how do they
Who does what?
apply to us, and how do we, get in front of each of them, and what are their differences?
Well, this is a long discussion, yeah. I think it's also important to note that while we can talk about this in general senses, state to state, some of the laws can vary. So please know that, guys. So don't act like what we're saying is 100% set in stone or anything.
So I think maybe the first thing, because this has been prevalent on the socials in the last few weeks, the difference between a talent agent and a talent manager or a manager. I think we should start there. What are the differences between a talent agent and a manager, Gabby?
Okay. So an agent is regulated by state law, and usually there is a cap on what they are allowed to charge for the facilitating of a job, and it's typically between 10 and 20% at a maximum. Mm-hmm. And talent agents are there to act as a go-between in the negotiation process between talent and clientele. The agent or agency represents a group of talent, and when a job opportunity presents itself, it is that agent's obligation to do everything that they can to try to cast someone on their roster for that position. They cannot cast people outside of that roster. They have to stay within that group.
So interesting. So Gabby, so then does every agency, they have to be registered with the state and be directed by the state? Is that true?
This is where we get into these lovely gray zones that the internet has created. If we go old school, yes, technically they are registered with their state labor department and they are a legal entity.
Yeah.
Now, today, I don't know that all companies who claim they're an agent are in fact legally operating that way, but they should be. And of course, the notable, well-known, well-established agencies certainly are.
So the agency acts legally as a mediary, right, between the talent and the client, and
correct. And they can only take it from one party or the other,
a
not
specific
both.
Commission between 10 and 20%. How are actually? I'm gonna maybe complicate this more. What are online casting agencies considered? Are they agents?
They're not. Online casting operates in its own playing field with its own rules. They can effectively do whatever they want.
Its own Wild West.
Correct.
Well, that's the scary part,
it is.
Right? It's the Wild West of entrepreneurship.
There is one other component of a traditional talent agency. They are geographically tied. So there is a territory or geography that they represent.
Correct. And when you sign a contract with an agent, typically you are signing the contract for that specific region. Although, as of late, I have not really had any
Well, again, the rules are getting more and more laxed. More and more companies are working with talent under non-exclusive agreements or without contractual agreements, but many still do. So you want to be mindful of that. Typically, you are going to enter into some kind of a geographic commitment with that company that any and all work that originates in that city, state, region will go through that particular agent.
So, question, if you are not on an agency roster, can you still receive auditions from an agency? technically?
I mean, again, this is where things get a little bendy. I mean, can you? I guess if the agent is really desperate to book something, to cast something, and they need to look outside their roster, can they sort of send up a flare and ask people to make a recommendation or bring in some of their friends? Sure.
And then if that were to book the job, then would they then be on the roster of the talent agency?
Possibly, or it might just be a singular occurrence.
But I thought that some of the rules and regulations of the agencies were that you had to be on the roster. Is that correct?
It's traditional versus new school.
So then maybe some laws have been relaxed on.
I don't think the laws themselves have been relaxed. I just think the way companies are doing business has relaxed. That's all.
Interesting.
They're bending the rules a bit.
Bending the rules seems to apply across all of these entities: casting directors, managers, studios, agents. So, all right. So then that's the agent. Let's talk about managers, Gabby. My old school idea of a manager was they were not an agent. They were there to advise you in all aspects of your career, and you paid them a fee, typically 10% to 20%, right, of your income to have that ability, or to have that kind of management where they look out for you and I guess direct you to talent agencies and direct you to the jobs, but they don't actually bring in jobs.
Correct. Managers in their traditional role assist you in meeting goals, strengthening and developing relationships with talent agents, and venturing into new areas of your business. They can even help with things like your financials, with investing. They can help with taxes, with all of the administrative and financial management of your company. However, in a lot of states, they are not legally allowed to generate work, to facilitate work, to negotiate work. All of that would be a conflict of interest.
Interesting. So can I just say I'm a manager? Can I just deem myself a manager? Do I have laws that are governing my, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Can I just say, Gabby, I'm going to manage you. Let me manage you. And you pay me money.
I think in certain states, namely New York and California, where the entertainment industries are obviously very prevalent and entrenched, those states have labor laws in effect that restrict and regulate what someone who calls themselves a manager can and can't do. Because if they didn't, then there'd be a whole lot of people getting taken advantage of and potentially being ripped off.
Yeah.
In other states, such a law may or may not exist. And then, yes, therefore, anybody who calls themselves a coach or a consultant or a manager, those terms are almost interchangeable.
Right. Well, because, I'm a coach online, and I didn't have to. I'm an established business.
We consult on people's businesses.
Correct.
I think all coaches at some point consult with somebody on their voiceover business in a way that is similar to what a manager does.
Got it.
Yeah.
So managers have a little more leeway. So then if somebody is, because there's a few known managers in the voiceover industry, right? There's a few known that have been operating for years. And so traditionally, I think the idea was to have a very exclusive roster.
Yes, and in that, it was having a very exclusive, very active, very busy money-making roster because... you wouldn't be on their roster if you couldn't make them money. I mean, that's their business, right? They're taking 10% of everything you bring in from all sources.
Yeah, so they want to have, good talent on their rosters that's going to be able to bring them money.
Yeah, management has always been considered in the entertainment world an elite level thing anyway. To have a manager, you really got to be making the bucks.
So then let me ask you a question. Is that the same as, let's say, pay-to-plays that do management services or act as managers, right? There's a very blurred line there, right? They're a pay-to-play, which is the Wild West of, is there any laws regulating them? So I want to get back to the question about that, the blurred lines of, let's say, online casting sites who act as managers. And are there any laws governing them?
See, I don't think that there are. And I think in a lot of states, legally, to use that term manager is incorrect. I don't think that's what they're really doing. I think they offer
management
and
services.
I think here's the gray, right? They offer what are called managed jobs.
So it's not a management company. They're managed jobs. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a case-by-case individual basis where in actuality what they're doing in that moment is simply acting as a casting director.
Or agent.
Either. Right. Correct.
What if they're seeking work, right? That's the question. If they're going out and seeking clients, right, and then presenting them to talent on their roster, quote unquote, right? Are they not acting as an agent?
That's an agent.
If they are indeed taking a portion of that money or charging for the service. See, it's so confusing, right? Because there's a membership fee.
Well, and again, this is where people, have we've gone beyond what used to be called double dipping. We're in triple dipping potentially.
Yeah.
It is a little bit crazy.
Yes. So yeah, going back to the Wild West of online casting sites who are having management jobs but yet seeking work, right? So they're acting like an agent, right? And then, how is that even? And especially depending on what state they're in, if they're not even in the United States, right? Where's their home base? Are they governed by laws of their home base, of where that company's registered?
I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I don't know. But I mean, rightfully, talent are starting to question these things and look into it and wanting to know more about where and what and how the inner workings of a job are for the sake of transparency and so that they know they're not being taken advantage of or losing money.
Exactly.
Which then, of course, brings us to casting directors.
Yes, let's talk about casting directors. I think maybe a smaller segment of what I know to be out there in the industry, or they've been around the longest.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the origin. I don't know the origin story or history of casting companies. They're another party, a third party, that is hired by an independent company. So usually this is where you get into movies or, cartoons, animations, TV shows, big budget things. They're brought in to find the best talent for the job across all different agency rosters. And so they have the ability to do what others do not, which is cross rosters. Right. They can go and seek out talent from all over.
The talent doesn't have to even be on a roster. The talent could be anyone, correct?
No, they're not. They're not. There is no roster. And I think the thing with casting directors is that really they were created probably just for fairness. It was so no one agent could dominate the scene. And in a lot of geographies, in a lot of areas, there are casting directors who are almost the kingpin. I mean, they really not like here in Charlotte, we have a company that no local production, nothing on camera, on film, nothing gets done that doesn't go through this one company.
And I know that there's companies in LA, the same thing applies.
Yeah.
They have access to a multitude of talent and clients and have great relationships. And now, is there any money that is made outside of the company that's hiring the casting director? Is it a flat fee they're hiring or they're paying the casting director to cast for them? The money is not being paid by the talent at all.
It depends. It depends on the contract. It depends on the talent status of union versus non-union, right? There's a lot of gray here.
Right.
If we're talking about a unionized casting, no, the casting fee is paid by the company and the talent loses nothing to them. If we're talking about non-union, all bets are off. They can make up the rules as they go. And I've seen casting companies take from both ends. I actually left a company that did that.
Now, interesting. Really? Talk about that experience. Wait, a casting company, right? Not a talent agency, but a casting company?
A casting company that I was involved in for many years. And
so legally, on paper, they were a casting company. They were not a talent agency, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And this allows them to operate, again, in this kind of middle zone without having to have any labor laws to
right.
Dictate. Have to honor, and no state laws to honor. And they did this. And in these kinds of practices, God, it just made me sick. It gets to a point where when you see it...
What kind of practices, Gabby?
it's
Are you willing to divulge that information?
I mean, a little bit, yeah. So double dipping is just, it's greedy. It is what it is. It is a way to maximize the earnings on a job by taking a percentage from both the talent and the client. Now, if it's...
That's entrepreneurship, they're going to say.
And I mean, look, if it's 10% and 10%, I don't necessarily see a problem with that. I think that that's still in line. I think it's still in parameters. It's fair. It's acceptable. But what happens with casting companies sometimes is because they are that go-between, they're not disclosing the final numbers to either party.
So nobody knows, right? Nobody knows what the final numbers are.
Correct. And as a result, that a casting company can really skim a large percentage of the job in either direction for themselves. And so, yeah, when I started to see things like that, I was like, I'm out, can't do this.
And that's interesting, Gabby, because that is, one of the issues that I know a lot of people are having with casting companies or online casting companies. If you don't know what is the original budget for the job, and that way you're not seeing how much is going to the managed person, or the talent or the management company. And so I think that is what sparked a whole revolution, I'm going to call it, on transparency in this voiceover industry.
And I mean, again, rightfully so. The business owner in me, the entrepreneur in me, says there's something within reason. Like, I even have a contract now with one of my agents who also, again, non-union agent, so the lines are kind of blurry. They take a casting fee from the client, and then they also take a percentage from me as the talent. But I feel that those fees are within reason. So I'm happy to honor that contract and work with them. But when it's not being disclosed how much the percentages are across the board and people are sort of making up the rules as they go, it can get kind of gross.
And especially, too, with the latest practice of not a lot of agents, my recent agents, am I signing contracts? So maybe it's an email where they'll say 10%, or if they even say that. To be honest with you, I think sometimes voice talent are so excited about getting signed with an agent that they're just not reading anything or even demanding a contract, right? Here, yes, I just want to be on your roster.
And therein lies one of the ways in which companies are kind of getting away with this, because you can be on a roster but not officially represented.
Yes, exactly.
If a contract isn't signed.
Exactly.
But they can still put you up on their website and promote you.
Yeah, and that's where that gray area is. Now, question for you. So that's casting directors, right? Casting companies. Now, what is the difference between casting companies and production studios? Because I get hired by production studios all the time, and I never know what the job pays. I just get, will you accept, or here's what we are paying for the job. And so I don't know the bottom line.
No one ever does.
I never questioned it, Gabby. And so if the price seemed fair to me, I was like, okay, it sounds great. If it was in line with my rates. So I never know.
Remember, again, back in the day, everyone across the board paid studio fees. And that's how a studio made their money.
Yes.
And because home studios were not the norm.
Right.
So
good point.
Studios really didn't have anything to do with the talent fees or didn't take a percentage or a cut, because that's, again, not how they made their money. In recent years, because of all the competition, online casting, home studios, professional studios have had to, in many cases, be forced to start to cast talent and keep a roster of their own.
Exactly.
So as a result, many of them are crossing lines all over the place. Some of them are acting as casting people. Now, here's where it gets kind of crazy. And I've seen this in a number of instances, and this one always kind of bugs me a little. There are some studios who have registered themselves as agents. Which, again, brings up this oddity of, are they... are people potentially double or triple dipping somewhere? Because if you're getting a studio fee because you're renting the studio space, and you're getting the casting fee, and you're getting a fee from the talent, it's like, holy cow, guys.
Yeah. So this brings me to yet another point or observation, that once the home studios started to become the norm, right? Back in the day, it used to be like, don't forget, it costs you money for that studio or to maintain that studio. And are you including those fees? Or is that something that's outdated now, Gabby?
I just don't think that's even how it went. I think
we all forgot about the home studio. We were hire us because we're cheaper. We have our own studio.
That's it. That's precisely what it was. Mm-hmm. From day one, it was a tactic to shut studios out and to be perceived as less money. So that's
undercutting. See, we undercut our
we did
studios.
and as a result of undercutting those studios, that's why so many of them have now had to involve themselves in the casting process to recoup those funds.
Well, yeah, I mean they've got to stay alive,
and
so
many studios have shut the doors. Obviously, as a result, many studios.
Wow, that is a tangled web, Gabby.
Oh yeah,
of casting directors, agents, managers, and studios.
Shizzle.
Oh, for shizzle. Super complicated. So as bosses, what can we do to, I don't know, stay safe, to be aware, educate ourselves for sure?
I think this is it. I think it's just knowing who does what, where, how, and why, and knowing when, if someone is claiming to do one thing, being able to go, I don't think that's really necessarily what this person is doing. And then using your business knowledge to still be able to say, okay, is the practice sound or the term something that I think is acceptable?
Remember we had the episode where we were talking about how to protect your brand and had somebody who had a close domain name to the VO Peeps. They had put up a site saying that they were going to take 10%. Of all the jobs that came through and that were given to talent. And that
almost
just
like
outraged.
A pay to play or?
Well, no, it was just a site, and they would get jobs, and anything that was cast through that site, they would receive a 10% commission on that because they hosted the site and got the job opportunities.
Okay.
And this was an independent person. It's not unlike when online casting happened, and they seemed like legit companies, right? In the beginning, nobody raised an eyebrow in the beginning because it was providing an opportunity. Yet lately, if one person, right, says, I'm going to charge you 10% if you get the job through this site, then it became an uproar and pretty much people shut the site down. And people said, double dipping, that's not right. You're acting as you are not a manager or agent or whatever it was. Yeah. And so it's just interesting to me how we've evolved over the years in terms of distribution of monies. I mean, I know I've done casting myself, and I've always, for me to cast for a client, I've always been upfront with the talent if I were going to say, look, I'm going to get a flat fee of so much for casting this. And I don't know, Gabby, I'm sure you've cast as well.
When I got out of casting, I pretty much got out of casting. But,
because you were disappointed.
Well, that's part of it. But if the need arises, I mean, sure. But yeah, it's the same thing. I'll just do a flat standard fee.
Is there a standard? Is there something that you feel is fair? I mean,
10 to 20%. 10% if it's union, 20% if it's non-union.
And that seems fair. So, wow, a lot of stuff to digest, Gabby.
Not that with the new technology, these titles or these things make a big difference, but knowing and understanding the expectation of the relationship is what's really important for us. How can you understand what that relationship's going to be and what it is that service fee pays for if you don't have this defined? So that's all.
And speaking of relationships, we have a great relationship with our sponsor and our good friend Kevin from IPDTL, who allows us to connect with each other and with you all like a boss. And if you want to find out more, you can go to ipdtl.com.
And, we have a great class on negotiation that kind of picks up this conversation and I think takes it to that next level of how to educate yourself and be well informed about these processes. So you can go to voboss.com and check that out.
Yes. And guys, don't forget about our Boss Blast, which allows you to direct market your services to your clients.
Exactly.
All right. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your hosts, Ann Ganguzza and Gabby Nistico. All rights reserved. Ann Ganguzza voice talent in association with 3 Moon Media. Redistribution with permission. Coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.